Hello everyone, and welcome to this video where we will be discussing how to onboard devices from your network into the FireMon Security Manager. After having installed the FireMon operating system and configuring a user's access to the web interface with the correct permissions, the next step is to join your security devices to the system to begin the data retrieval process. Due to the many devices that FireMon supports, the process for each will vary, though the general idea is the same for all. All security intelligence platform applications interact with security devices using machine-to-machine communication to retrieve security policies and configurations, as well as to detect changes. There are two main options for joining firewalls. The first is to join them individually if allowed, or if the vendor uses a management station which manages several devices, the management station can be onboarded and SIP will automatically join the managed firewalls, log servers, and/or additional domain servers. In most instances, the security manager requires the use of an administrator account to collect information from any monitored device. We'll begin by adding an individual Palo Alto firewall. Now there's a little more work in joining devices than entering their information in SIP. There are steps that need to be taken on the devices themselves, such as creating a user with administrative permissions and possibly configuring syslog messages to be sent to the data collector. Looking at the administration page in the SIP interface, our first step will be to select the vendor of the device to be added. Here we'll see many devices which FireMon can monitor as individual firewalls. The Create page is displayed, and as for most devices, we will be prompted to name the device object, its management IP address, the data collector group it will be assigned to, any central syslog servers it is sending its syslogs to along with the syslog match name, and the external ID. As noted by asterisks, only the name and data collector group are mandatory fields, but the IP address would obviously be needed as well. Moving on to the device settings section, we will see different fields depending on the devices. In this case, we need to enter the administrator account credentials we created on the firewall and the SSH and REST API ports, which were filled out for us already. As far as adding this device to our FireMon server, we could move on and click on Save, but there are a few configuration settings we suggest to review. In the Change Monitoring section, ensure that the check for change interval in minutes is not set too low, as this could cause FireMon to pull some devices' entire database too frequently. The default in later versions of SIP is 24 hours or 1,440 minutes. In the Advanced section, it would be a good idea to enable the Automatically Update SSH Keys option, as this will ensure that there will be no issues retrieving if any SSH key changes for whatever reason. Now we click Save. And if there are not any issues communicating with the device, we will see it immediately created in our device's view. A manual retrieval is also initiated and should finish within a few minutes, which we will see with the blue toast notification at the top right. The second option is to add devices via a management server. For this demonstration, we will add a Checkpoint Multi-Domain Management Server, or MDS, running version R80.30. We first connect to Checkpoint's Smart Console to configure the needed objects and access. We first create a user in the MDS domain with administrative access, which FireMon will use to retrieve the configurations and policies. We could utilize a user that is already configured on the system, but we recommend creating a new one so that the audit logs will show when the new FireMon user is accessing the system. Next, a host object needs to be created for the FireMon data collector, which will be used in the OPSEC object. On that note, the OPSEC object can be created in the global domain to represent the FireMon data collector. FireMon data collectors cannot use syslog to retrieve change information from checkpoint firewalls. Instead, we use a secure OPSEC connection to the management server, which detects changes by polling the server's Postgres database with API calls. So in the OPSEC object window, we give the object an appropriate name, and then in the host section, we select the host object we created. Enable the LIA and CPMI processes, then click on the related tabs and configure those as needed. In the communication window, we will enter a password for the SIC communication between the MDS and data collector. When we click on Initialize, it will show that connection was not established. But this is because FireMon has not been configured to communicate just yet. The last steps on the checkpoint side are to restart the API process in the CLI and reassign the global policy on the MDS domain. In the FireMon web interface, we will now click on Devices and Management Stations, then click the Create button. Once again, we see the list of supported management servers, and depending on the vendor, there may be several options to choose from. The General Properties section is shown once again, and it looks the same as for the individual Palo Alto firewall. We enter the name, description, management IP address, and data collector group, but the central syslog server and syslog match names are not needed as we are using the OPSEC connection instead of syslog from the management server. Next, we move on to the device settings section where there are a few differences. First, we enter the username and password for the admin we created, but we also need the OPSEC application name, which is the name of the OPSEC object we created on the MDS, and the associated SIC password. The port and method should already be filled in for us with the default values, and the OPSEC distinguished name and certificate should fill in after the Save button is clicked and SIC is established. We check the change monitoring section to ensure the check for change interval is not a low number, and we should be good to hit Save. A manual retrieval is once again initiated, and when this is complete, the data collector will begin to retrieve the configurations from the child domains and all managed log servers and firewalls. Keep in mind that the examples discussed are only two of the multiple products supported. The FireMon Administration User's Guide found in our User Center details all the step-by-step instructions for each of the supported vendors. As mentioned, the procedures for adding each type of device will vary whether they are individual firewalls or management servers, whether they're in the cloud, virtual machines, or physical appliances with virtualized child devices. In addition, there's also a way to automate the import of many devices by creating a bulk import spreadsheet with the information for each device. This will require that the preliminary work be completed on each device for retrievals to work correctly. Once the preliminary work is completed, click on the Import button at the top right of the administration screen and then choose a prepared file. If bulk importing management stations, a different file will need to be used, found in the Device Management Stations page. There is a sample file in the correct format that can be downloaded and edited. Along with the needed device configurations, we see in the file that one of the parameters is the data collector group ID, which is automatically populated for you. But if a different group ID is needed, we can easily see it if we go to System, Data Collector Groups, and click on the specific group. The ID will be shown at the end of the URL in the browser. We recommend that an individual file be limited to 50 devices at most, so as not to overwhelm the system, as retrievals will begin with each added device. In conclusion, FireMon supports onboarding multiple security devices from multiple vendors as shown. The Administration User's Guide will be your source for the processes for each type of device. The guide can be found at https://usercenter.firemon.com.